Okay, so this is 12.5. I've done a couple videos and I got a few comments. One for sure is I want to preface, I love FSD. I'll probably not buy any other car other than Tesla until other cars have FSD. I use it 90% of the time. So I'm making these videos because I see a lot of the other videos, and maybe they're based out of California or different areas or whatnot, and they're almost flawless every time. And I definitely have flawless drives, there's no doubt, and it's getting so close to being there. But I'm over here in Oklahoma, so I'm just giving a real life examples of some of the things that I notice that might be a hindrance to them to trying to get it to level 5 and get it so it's full self-driving robo-taxi. You don't have to be in the front seat, which is, I think it's going to be awesome when that comes out, and I think Tesla's going to be the one that does it for sure. So that being said, I love FSD, and I'm doing these tests just to show in real world scenarios what it looks like, and what I notice as issues. Not everybody may agree, and they are generally small. I mean, they really are. It's getting pretty good. So if I do mention something, it's not because I'm trying to be overly critical or anything. It's just noticing it and hoping that it gets caught and addressed in future updates. So I took a more complicated route here. I've done some pretty straightforward ones, which haven't had a lot of problems at all. So this one will be a little bit more complicated, and we'll see. I'm sure it'll handle 90% of it pretty good, but I keep everything on assertive. I will hit the accelerator if necessary, but I am trying to let it do its thing. I do still have auto offset on, so I'm going to let that do its thing as well. I may have to hit the accelerator. I've said in other videos, I find the auto offset slow, and apparently if you hit the accelerator, it'll kind of use that speed as its gauge, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But I will do that if necessary. So let's take this trip. So one thing I wanted to see is staging. I know I'm kind of complaining about that, but I do think it's one, like FSD does a lot of things really well, but it kind of hinders itself sometimes by not staging itself properly. So I am going to point out those things that I notice, and I know that Tesla knows this as well because it's kind of mentioned in their upcoming features. So it's not like I'm being hypercritical. It's obviously something that they're working on. And when I had 12.4.3, it seemed like they were trying to take a big leap in it, and it feels to me like they rolled it back a little bit on this one, but we'll see how this one goes if we run into any staging issues. So this is automatically better for sure. 12.3 would not have on this exact run on this street, it did not put me into the left lane. That actually is a turning lane on the right, so the lane does end. So if you are going straight or taking a left, you do need to be in this lane. So on 12.3.6 it had me in the right lane, and then kind of faltered a bit, and I had to click it out to get back over into here. So I put a few weird points in, like just addresses, to make the route a little bit more complicated. So I don't know how that'll work necessarily if I just click out of it as it goes, but I'll mention it if it causes an issue that it's not its fault. That was a little strange. I'm going to give it some gas since that guy just flashed us to go forward. It was not going to go. It would have definitely just sat there. So you can, and I mentioned this before, it feels safe. There's no issues with that. I'd rather it err on the side of caution on some of those situations, and I give it some acceleration. I'm just curious. Sometimes I let it play itself out because, you know, when this goes the robo-taxi way and you don't have somebody sitting here willing to give it or able to give it any acceleration, they're sitting in the back or whatnot. I'm interested what it does in those situations. I don't think most of the problems that happen have really anything to do with standard driving or, you know, it doing its thing on an empty road, or even if everybody was driving with full self-driving. You know, it really has to do with people, you know. So, you know, that person not going and flashing his lights to let us go, which is a nice thing, but obviously that's confusing for the FSD. I don't know if it has to be confusing for the FSD, but currently it is. I guess might as well show it backing in. So I don't know if they've changed anything with this, but okay, well, this is in a parking lot. I normally wouldn't do this, but let's just test it, seeing what it'll do coming out of a parking lot if you just click continue. I mean, it technically, it allows you to do so. So I normally don't do that. I normally will go to the street, or at least to the edge, where it's going to turn onto the street, and then click it on. But we'll click it on here and see what it does. I'll wait till this car passes. So it immediately went kind of the opposite way of what it was saying it was going to do, but it generally gets super confused in this. So that it basically just stopped. It still can technically go where it was saying. I still haven't touched anything. It's kind of doing a weird thing, but hey, it's kind of making its way through. So let's see how it goes here. So we're kind of in the middle of this lane. It does this a lot in parking lots, and then it just did cross that double line, or cross the white line and take 2 lanes to turn. I really, really don't like that. So if there is my biggest gripe with FSD, and it's not just this version, I think it's all, it's that it takes 2 lanes to turn, and I really think that it should only do that if it absolutely needs to, and otherwise it should stay in its own lane. And that's a law 90% 100% of places. I don't know anywhere that's it's not a law, but you have to turn into the closest lane when you're making a turn. So like I said, I still really do use this 90% of the time. I use it, I would say, assisted. I kind of, like I said, in the parking lot, I would get near the edge and then turn it on. I turn it off when I think it's doing anything weird. I'm not trying to get into an accident, or not so much ever an accident, more just irritating the drivers around me when it's a little bit confused. So, so that was really neat. That was I like that. It checked, that's one of the situations where, it really can check faster than me, so I think in the future we're going to feel, so safe that it makes those maneuvers, knowing that it checked before. A person would generally, we might make that maneuver, but, we're kind of checking while we're making the maneuver. So, but that was very fast. Car starts turning, car stops in the way, it maneuvers, turns on the turning signal, maneuvers around and gets back going. I mean, that's great. Haven't had too many issues with offset yet. I've not hit the accelerator but that one time. And yeah, it's been pretty good. Obviously, I haven't touched the steering wheel either, but yeah, it's been pretty good. So very, very smooth. Very smooth up to that light. Very smooth. These are actually fairly narrow lanes, so a lot of people don't really like, I mean, there's a lot of cities, so I'm sure lots of narrow lanes, but it is nice to have FSD driving and know that it's looking out on all this kind of stuff. Does not like you messing with the screen. I'm just trying to see the next turn. So, staging is still my question. We'll see. I mean, we're going to be taking a left. I mean, it's still a ways away, so it doesn't have to get into the other lane yet. So smooth though, I'm sure you guys can see, it's smooth, it's nice. I mean, I have no issues. I feel very comfortable driving. I don't feel like I need to be ready to take over at all points. I mean, I feel like I get a little bit more ready when I know something weird is coming up, but for general driving, it's pretty smooth. Still staging, and I will say, and we'll see how this works out. There's a lot more cars here. So there's a lot more cars, so we'll see. But in 0.2 of a mile, I need to take a left. Currently, I'm in the far right lane, so we'll see how that works. Not too bad, but you know, that's quite last minute. This guy behind us let us in, which was very nice. That was very confident. I'll say that it thought about it and it went. I don't know if anybody that was driving would be happy that I went at that exact moment, but it did it. This car is kind of in the middle, so that was a slow little turn, but I mean, impressive nonetheless. That was impressive, and that was very confident. So this is kind of where my marker had landed, so I just had dropped it. So it did give an address, but I know somebody had said that it would pull into a driveway, but I don't think it was going to pull into a driveway. So I'm going to pause here because it went past the marker because I didn't hit the brakes or do anything. It went past the marker, and now it was going to go and do a loop and get back to the marker. So interesting, because that was an address that I had put in, so it didn't stop at the house or at the address I had put in. So okay, so next stop, let's activate this again. It really has no problems. You can absolutely activate it from, you know, being on the side of the road, you know, even at a complete stop. Once you put it into drive once, you click it again, it'll generally start going. You might have to give it a little bit of acceleration to start going, but generally works pretty well. Nice confident turns, I will say. I personally like that. I like it to have a little bit more acceleration, you know, getting up to speed, and I like it making full decisions going through stop signs and stoplights and not overthinking it. So we'll see. I think this way has some interesting stops. So that's the stop at the stop sign, the creeping forward, and generally now in 12.5, it creeps forward and then goes. It doesn't creep forward, stop again, and then creep a little bit and go. It stops once, it creeps forward slowly, and then goes when it can, and that's a heck of a lot more natural than what it was doing before. Here's a roundabout coming up. See how it handles it. Perfectly. So here's a car stopped on the side of the road. It's been handling this kind of stuff pretty well, especially with hazards on. Yeah, very, very, very confident. So stop at the stop sign, and then, so it's creep forward and go is all kind of part of the same movement now. So they're not so separated, which is really nice. It feels a lot more natural. So that was still, it kind of veered into the other lane and taking 2 lanes to turn. Like I said, it's more comfortable, and I'm not denying that at all. But I still think that they need to get that bang on. It would be nice just knowing that it's going to turn into its own lane consistently. So that lane is ending its turn lane, so it switched over nicely. I mean, it's very smooth, very nice driving. Wouldn't have much complaints if it was an Uber driver driving me around. Slowing down over the train tracks. Very considerate. I still will say that this is fine, but you know, still kind of strange that it stays so far back on the lights. You know, the white line is really where that line is, so it's fine. Just strange. So there's 2 turn lanes here. I don't 100% know what it was intending. We do have a right turn coming up after this, so interesting that it decided to stay on this lane. It could be because there's a car there, so this would technically be the quicker route. So, but that's one of those things that, like I said, for the staging, it could definitely get into that lane and then be, you know, halfway prepped for the next turn. And I feel that 12.4.3 was doing that more. And I could be wrong. I really didn't get as much time with it as I wanted. It was a pretty brief interval between getting 12.4.3 and then getting 12.5. And I'm happy for it. I'm glad to get the newest update as quick as I can. So that guy took a weird thing, kind of came into our lane. So if there's any question about its collision avoidance, it slowed down right there to stay behind this guy because he was not staying in his lane. So that's a whole nother thing that is just wonderful about FSD, because that's defensive driving, which is great to know that it will do that and prevent an accident. Because, you know, it could have just kept doing what it's supposed to do, stayed in the middle of its lane, and, you know, we probably would have hit mirrors, which would not have been good. So it's very impressive that it is accounting for all that. I'm going to... This is interesting. So it's turning, but the GPS says it's going straight. So this is interesting, and it's done this to me before. I didn't know if I'd be able to catch it on video. That is very strange. Very curious. So this is narrow roads, trucks on each side, another car coming. Let's see what it does. I mean, that's the right thing to do. That's the correct response still. So this is an interesting area. Let's see what it does on bike lane symbols on the middle of the road. it avoids the bike lane symbols on the middle of the road, which I think is funny. Okay, well that concludes that. This is where I was having it take me, so we'll call it good, and that should give some good indication of what it can do.